Hi everyone, it's Elizabeth here. So I wanted to do, excuse me, I've been sick. I wanted to do this video in regards to hurt people, and healed people, heal people. It's kind of funny as I'm doing this video, I'm trying to find a spot in my apartment where the light is actually working normally, and I keep finding this duality of kind of like the light and the dark, which kind of goes to, it's a little bit symbolic, I guess, to some points of this video. So here's the thing. Generally, when people are hurt and a lot of people aren't open to healing today. So a lot of people are finding their self-worth through external means. So for example, they might download a dating app to get some attention from the opposite sex to make themselves feel better, or they are really hurt, so they might start, and they're lonely, so they might start burying themselves in work or picking up a new hobby, and all of a sudden they're filling all of this time to avoid their mind to wander off into the areas of suffrage in their life, by compensating with external things like hobbies or new skills like learning how to paint and things like that. That might be a bad example because art is therapeutic in itself, but sometimes people will go back to school, or they'll start doing like Spartan races and things like that, when the reality of what they need is to sit down and focus on what they're looking for in life. So a lot of times when hurt people aren't healed through searching of their getting in touch with their inner world and or having some form of faith and connection to God, that bitterness and anger can stew into the body, especially for long periods of time, and that eventually leads to people wanting to hurt other people. You see this with narcissists and psychopaths. Sometimes these people are bred this way from their childhood. If somebody has been sexually traumatized as a child, most likely they will grow up either being like a pedophile, or they will, do the same thing to others that was done to them. So basically, they're kind of continuing this chain reaction of hurting other people just because they've been hurt before. And a lot of times, hurt people have an eye for an eye mentality. So what you do to me, I'm going to do to you. Now, there definitely is a balance in life to some degree where you can't just always walk through life being super selfless, because people take advantage of selfless people. So you have to have some borders and boundaries within yourself to understand that if you're trying to do good in the world as a healed person, some people might take advantage of that. And you definitely see that with more predatory type of people, or in the dating world, you see many spiritual women falling trapped to predatory type of men or predatory type of gurus, who will take advantage of their weak spots and manipulate them to, do what they want, or love bomb them so they stay sucked into the circle. And once they get you kind of hooked, then that's where a lot of the manipulation and the abuse and neglect starts to begin. So it's almost like being on a drug, because you're at this high of receiving all this love and attention from somebody, and then all of a sudden it's all withdrawn. So you're not getting all of those things like the dopamine hits in the body. So just some thoughts about hurt people is, one thing is that hurt people often transfer their inner anger onto their family and close friends. It's not surprising that we often get the most mad at people in our lives are the ones who are closest to us. But they also take their shit out on other people. You can tell a lot of hurt people take their stuff out on their family. You see this with like abusive husbands. They have anger management issues. And so, it's absolutely just because they have anger issues does not give them an excuse to go out and abuse their family. And it's the same as if somebody is a sex addict, that just because they have certain sexual desires doesn't necessarily give them the excuse to go and cheat on their partner. But the reality is, a lot of those people are suffering inside. Some of them are just an addict, but a lot of people who do run off and cheat are suffering from some sort of pain or wound that's in their life that's never been healed. A lot of times, if it's a man, they have a lot of these mother wound issues. They didn't get enough love or comfort or support from their mother, so they're just constantly seeking attention from females. And obviously, for a lot of those types, their wife or their girlfriend isn't enough, so they have to go and do this or they have to be sexual and intimate with other people. So hurt people also tend to carry a lot of this victim mentality and victim spirit. Now, one example that I'll give is last year I did a lot of analyzation of the red pill movement, which is a group for men, and then some in terms of like modern feminism. And what I noticed is that these two extreme ends of the spectrum is that these are support groups for people who are highly unhealed individuals and have such a horrible, shitty perception of the opposite gender. Just because one man hurt a woman doesn't say, like, emotionally, doesn't mean that all men are horrible people and manipulators. And just because one woman drained a man's bank account during divorce doesn't mean all women are gold diggers and that they're all signing up for marriage just for the sake of having divorce. A lot of these people who are attracted to these extreme polar ends of the spectrum of support groups like feminism and the red pill are often victims. So, they have a lot of this unfair mindset, and they just have a really hard time entering relationships because they have a really horrible perception of the opposite gender. I mildly dated somebody who was in the red pill movement, and I realized I couldn't deal living or being with somebody who had that type of mentality because the person just thought that all women were shitty and emotionally needy, and it was like disgusting to be around. So of course he ended up continuing his cycle of like this self-fulfilling prophecy to be single because he couldn't quite distinguish the difference between really extreme situations and like your average mundane person. Hurt people often alienate others and wonder why no one is there for them. Sometimes they continuously hurt the people they love, or they just shelter and push themselves away from society. They might be a little bit of a loner. And when you're not receptive to letting people in your life, especially to help you heal or to give you love, sometimes it's like a self-destructive behavior that when, if a friend constantly invites you out somewhere and you deny them like 17 times, the friend is going to stop inviting you out. And then you're going to sit there and complain, why does nobody invite me anywhere? It's like, well, maybe people have, but you just haven't been receptive to being open to that invitation of certain types of people who've entered your life. Hurt people also are very emotionally immature. So if somebody has received some form of abuse in, say, like at 10 to 12 years old, that trauma is sitting within their body, and a lot of times they might be like a 35-year-old person, but they have this emotional intelligence or capacity of a 10 to 12-year-old child. So it is like this child adult, because all of this trauma and pain is stuck in their body, and they are just unable to emotionally grow from that stage of life. And that requires a lot of therapy. It requires a lot of faith and trust in God, to asking God to help them heal and to guide them to the right individuals. And a lot of times hurt people are also just so either like frustrated or depressed from their past that they can't move on from being hurt. So they just continue to carry these really horrible and negative thoughts or situations with them. And the reality is most people want to be around positive people. And it's really difficult to be around someone who is either constantly negative or bringing someone down or a negative Nancy. And you can have some sympathy and empathy for these people because the reality is all that pain and trauma or all that hurt is just stuck within them. And they're stuck in this cycle to continue to live through this type of more negative mentality. A lot of hurt people are triggered. I mean, look at politics today when people are saying, like, I'm triggered and things like that. Everything that's happening politically over the last few years, especially these emotional outbursts that have been extremely difficult to deal with if you can't handle things from a diplomatic manner, it's all pain and all of this shadow side and all of this negative junk that's within these people's consciousness is getting purged and getting lifted without. To some degree, you have to understand that if you're getting triggered, that is a blessing in disguise, because that wound that is getting resurfaced or reopened or gashed open, it's forcing you to heal it. I've had so many lessons in the world of dating over the last 2 years, and I've had men that have toyed with my emotions and my heart, and it has left me on the couch crying in tears for days. And it was so horrible. I don't ever want to experience that ever again. But the reality is, the purpose of that person entering my life was forcing me to heal the wound that was open, on top of finally stepping up to the plate, and it forced me to communicate. It forced me to stick up for myself. Instead of just being this sweet, nice girl, it's like, no, it is really rude for you to return my text messages every 4 days. It's giving me an incomplete message here. So the reality is, all of these wounds, and if they're walking around saying I'm triggered or I've been hurt and things like that, these are just all forcing you to go and heal the trauma that is still within you. And one thing that I kind of mentioned earlier is that a lot of hurt people, instead of going and healing themselves or getting counseling or going to yoga to start to change their hormonal flow, or seeking support from a group, they often tend to bury themselves to be busy. So they work more. They're trying to perform better at work. They're achieving more accomplishments. They become an addict of certain things, whether it's signing up for events or, doing something extreme like CrossFit. They can't seem to make amends within themselves, or they're not able to want to find a resolution to the situation. So it's just the same like coping. Hurt people often cope with drugs and alcohol, and sometimes, yes, there's medicinal things, like sometimes people use marijuana for anxiety. But why do you constantly have to use that external substance? It's like, what brain training do you have to do in order to get yourself to cope with that anxiety, and what is causing that anxiety in your life? So a lot of people tend to use medication or entertainment or school or drugs or alcohol or sex or hobbies, basically as a form of escapism, to run away from their problems and their reality. It's just the same as the concept of sweeping the dirt and dust underneath the rug. And a lot of times when people go through these negative cycles, once they start to go into forms of escapism, that's where a lot of, demonic deception, or areas of life where people can actually incorporate kind of a demon within them. And it makes them a shitty, horrible human being, because there is such a thing as demonic possession. God wants you to feel whole and complete and wants you to be loved. Satan wants to destroy. So in that sense, if you take that spiritual theory into a practical, logical method, Satan wants you to feel lonely. He wants you to feel unworthy. He wants you to feel depressed and anxious. And he wants you to feel like shit. And when you feel like shit and you cope with substances, I've learned this through energy healing, that when you are constantly seeking, when you are abusing a substance, whether it's alcohol or medication or marijuana or drugs, you are opening this gateway to dark forces to live within you. And then it's just like any other high on a drug. Once you're getting high on marijuana, maybe you need to start having a bunch of sex. And once you have a bunch of sex, maybe you need to go to porn, because normal Women, aren't receptive to a lot of things. So, you want to start to seek some of the deeper and darker stuff in life. Healed people heal people. People who are healed understand forgiveness, and they understand the various aspects and the duality of love. If you look at my face on this video, half of my face is shadow and half of my face is light. And the irony of me looking into the computer screen is I can look exactly behind me, and right at my midline, the other half of the light side of my face is dark, and the dark side of my face is has lightness behind it. So you have the choice to enter or to walk into the light or the shadow side of yourself. When you've healed yourself, you've come to a point of contentment and satisfaction, and you understand the higher consciousness of life. You understand that you don't necessarily want people to feel hurt or abused, but you can walk away from things that no longer serve you. I'm going through a myriad of like a little bit of a dating experience right now, and I accept the fact that somebody will probably ghost me, and it will not trigger me the same way it did before, because I look at that situation as a healed human being from a different perception to realize that this person doesn't have enough emotional maturity to end things appropriately, or maybe it's a blessing in disguise, and that person not re-entering my life, maybe it's just not meant to happen that way. So, it's like that person's on his own path in life. So healed people understand the divine connection with God and what God really wants for you in the life, in life, which is walking into the light. And when you walk into the light, the reality is you really do, on a deep down soul level, want the best for everybody, regardless of the pain or the suffering that some of them have caused, because you're not taking that victim mentality. Now, there is a little bit of a fine line there. Like if you're in an exclusive relationship and you're with somebody and they're pulling a bunch of shit out, that is the time that maybe you need to walk away. But to some degree, you understand that certain people walk into your life as a catalyst to force you to change. And when you are a beacon of light and hope for other people, as a light being, you will force people, you will be that bearer of light that will force people to change. You will be that catalyst. But that person has to choose whether to self-actualize and look at what's happening to realize if they want to change, or just to stay in, the mundane earth plane of, walking through their own darkness. So everybody has a choice in this life, in terms of that. Healed people want the world to heal, and a lot of people, especially if they come from yoga or the energetics standpoint, they understand that the revolution is coming from within. Once you change yourself and heal yourself, it is a ripple effect. I talked about this in other videos that I'll link down below. That ripple effect will go out into the community and help other people. I don't really work well with authority, and I'm glad that I don't work in a corporation or in the business world, because I probably wouldn't last long, because you have a lot of people, especially the ones who want to rise up the chain in the corporate world, who are tyrants, or a lot of CEOs are known to have psychopathic tendencies. There might not necessarily be dangerous murderers, but they have to have this ambition and drive to succeed to the top, or to get this corporation or this business ahead to the next step, to progress. That's the whole point of capitalism. But you see a lot of people who are wounded and hurt take their shit out on their employees or out on other people. I know people who are in pretty high level positions, and they admit they're a narcissist. And at times they've taken their crap out on me, and it's made me cry in my office, and it's made me feel like crap. And that, little bout of emotion will get healed, and sometimes you just need to cry it out. But like, the reality is those people are suffering on a deep, deep level, and there's really nothing you can do about it. That person has to choose to change. But you understand, when you are a healed person, that you necessarily, what is the way in your life. Everybody has their own truth, but when you are walking into a path of God. You are seeking wisdom from God. And a lot of the wisdom that I've sought is like, you know what? The corporate business world sucks. These people have the cash flow, which cash flow you need on this earth plane, but their spirit is miserable. And to some degree, they've sold out, and they have these golden handcuffs from the corporations because, as one of my Microsoft employees told me, a 7 to 10 year experienced program developer or like a software engineer can go into Microsoft and start off with a $300,000 salary. You know, that's a really hard job to walk away from, especially if they live within their means. They can afford so many things. They can afford the traveling personal trainer and massage therapy and really fine food and, you know, foie gras and all that stuff. So, and you know, they can buy a Tesla and things like that. And so they get stuck in this vicious cycle, and they're getting wounded and hurt at work. Their egos are getting crushed. Their employees are stabbing them in the back, or their coworkers, I should say, are stabbing them in the back. And that's why I think a lot of times you see a lot of really devout Christian people who do take their faith seriously. They either work for the government or they kind of have more like mundane jobs, whether, you know, they repair kitchens or they're construction worker or they, you know, rent houses and things like that. Because I just don't think a lot of them really want to go into the rat race. They just want to make enough money to live a good, simple life that can pay and provide for their family and things like that. So hurt people, and healed people, heal people. And the ones who are really strong in their faith and their foundation can really take a beating spiritually, you know, with hurt people. You know, they might get hurt by other people, but they understand that that person is suffering. It's not coming from a place of vengeance or like, ooh, I hope, you know, they make themselves suffer. I will say, coming out of a divorce, if I wasn't spiritually sound, I would have been so pent up with vengeance and anger. I would have wished the worst for my ex-husband. But the spiritual foundation of my life and my faith understood that the soul tie was being disconnected from God. No matter how hard I tried to save that marriage, it got further, the cord got further disconnected and cut the more I tried to grab on. And I accepted that fate, and I was like, you know what? I've been with this person for almost a decade of my life. It was like almost 33% of my existence. Why would I want anything bad to happen to that person? If this happened to me with my mindset at 20 years old, I would have hoped and wished that he would feel the pain that was within me. I would have hoped that his future wife would have left him. I would have just wanted the worst for him, and that comes and stems from a place of being hurt. And when you're not hurt, you don't want that for other people, no matter how bad they've hurt you. And that comes from a really high awareness place of that Christ consciousness. Jesus walked around with the sinners. Jesus healed people, and, you know, he died on the cross. I'm not saying you need to be a Jesus freak to understand this, but you can adopt some of these basic concepts of what he went through and who he hung out with in terms of to be able to apply those theories to your life. So anyways, my voice is getting really dry. I'm going to go, but thank you so much for listening. If you have any thoughts on this, please feel free to share them down below. I like learning from people and their thought processes and comments. I guess I have strong opinions, but I'm open-minded enough that I don't have my visors closed. I like learning from other people. If you can subscribe this channel, you can help me build it. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Okay, bye.